Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Genre Equality. I'm Hitzer.
I'm Hadi.
I'm Isa.
Before we begin, we just have to shout out, on the day we were recording this, it was the 91st Academy Awards. And
What up?
we got to shout out the superheroes of color who won a bunch of awards this year.
Yeah.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, by far our favorite, at least animated movie of last year, if not our favorite superhero movie in general, won Best Animated Picture. First time in like fucking 10 years that Pixar didn't win.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, for good reason though.
No, of
Pixar
course.
won for, I mean, they've been excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
But
I mean, it's just nice to see some diversity.
But Spider-Verse was on a whole other level.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
There's no way you could have taken that away, right? Like, even the feel itself, as good as it was, didn't quite reach the same standard that Spider-Verse has set.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how future winners look like, you know?
Indeed. Also, we got to shout out all the wins for Black Panther.
Wakanda forever.
We did discuss a bit that we didn't think Black Panther deserved to be nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Amongst that crop. I mean, it was certainly better than things like Bohemian Rhapsody.
I was just going to say that.
And eventual winner Green Book,
Yeah.
which in itself is fantasy, so I guess it's genre.
I mean, there was a lot of controversy that surrounded that movie.
Correct. But with Black Panther, at least with the Technical Craftsman Award, or shall I say women, because very deserved wins for Best Costuming for Ruth Carter.
Yep, makes sense.
And also production design. Yeah, so I mean groundbreaking, at least for women of color, and not just for superhero movies, which is Black Panther.
That's a revelation, man.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Domi Shi, who directed the very, very cute Bao, won for Best Animated Short. Yeah, so another woman of color winning an Oscar.
We go. Yeah.
So brilliant stuff. This is the year that I think superheroes of color really dominated.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to see what's next lah. I mean, clearly the Academy Awards is not shying away from genre anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, as we saw with Get Out last year.
I mean, it's slowly warming up lah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You know
I
what I
know,
mean?
I
There's
know.
still a lot like Hereditary was a big snub.
Correct.
Yeah.
An Oscar for Toni Collette.
Yeah, for example.
Hashtag, which is, I feel like, I love Olivia Colman and The Favourite.
Yeah.
But I thought Toni Collette should have had that in the bag.
Correct.
lah.
See, so
Yeah.
I mean, they're slowly warming up.
Correct, yeah. I think horror is still the bastard stepchild of genre.
Yeah,
People still look down on that, man.
I know,
You
but
know.
I mean, from the plethora of like movies we had the past few years, it seems that horror is stepping up lah.
It's been watershed last 2 years.
More
Yeah.
artful, lah.
More artful, yeah.
And next month we'll actually be covering Jordan Peele's new movie Us.
Ooh.
Which, I mean, considering his track record, he might even get another Oscar next year, or at least be an Oscar contender next year for Us.
He's
Yeah.
producing Twilight Zone, right? And hosting, right?
He is hosting Twilight Zone. His production company, Monkey Paw Productions, is
Right.
producing it, and he's also the showrunner for it.
Oh, right.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, he's had a very, very busy time. He was also going to be in the new Toy
And
Story.
just to imagine that he started on Mad TV.
Yeah. What are you doing, Keegan Michael?
Other things.
Well, wasn't he in that new Netflix thing? What college?
Friends from College.
Friends from College.
Wasn't he in
It's 3 seasons in, and he just got cancelled.
Wasn't he in Predator?
Keegan Michael Key was in Predator, which is genre. Keegan
There we
Michael
go.
Key is also in a TV show that I kind of liked last year called Impulse, which was on YouTube.
There we go.
Which is a kind of a spin-off from Jumper.
I mean, it's a bit. I mean, his career trajectory is a bit different from Jordan Peele lah.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, slightly. I mean, smaller,
Yeah.
but I mean, still successful. He's still working,
Of course,
right?
of course.
Yeah. And of course, both Key and Peele are going to be in the new Toy Story. Anyway, let's
back to the.
back to our regularly scheduled programming. We had to divert for the Oscars for a bit.
Yeah.
This month might be the shortest month of the year. But I mean, lots and lots to talk about, particularly with comic book adaptations. We have some interesting ones like Umbrella Academy, manga adaptations like Alita Battle Angel, which has been surprisingly successfully received, well received amongst manga fans. Of course, a ton of animated sequels. How to Train Your Dragon recently wrapped up its franchise. The Lego Movie 2 came out. And a few other smaller gems, like one of our favorite shows, Counterpart, we'll be talking about. Might even be its series finale. We're not sure yet. We'll discuss more.
It's a lot of like mystery behind it.
I know, just like the show itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, Russian Doll, etc. But let's begin with the return of a long-awaited show.
Oh no.
It's been 6 long years, and Young Justice is finally back. Season 3, subtitled Outsiders, is finally back on the DC universe, which is the streaming service that they have lah. Which Titans is on and Doom Patrol is on. And I do have to say that I feel really happy that one of my favorite shows from way back in the 6 years lah.
6 years is a long
I
time.
guess it's back in the day lah.
Yeah.
It's back, and it seems as if the show's requisite time jump
Yeah.
has allowed the team to mature even further.
Yeah.
Even as the big boys in the Justice League fall apart due to moral and political differences.
Infighting
or a bit of their own civil war, shall
Yeah.
we say. Outsiders uses the league's schism as like a backdrop for our hero's journey, and to illustrate how each of them has become prepared to handle situations that their mentors perhaps couldn't or wouldn't. And in other ways showing their frustrations at having to be the grown-ups now.
Correct.
Because they used to be the kids, right?
Yeah.
Caring for a new team of ragtag kids who are each refugees or castaways in their own way.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about Young Justice Season 3?
Surprisingly accurate to the comic books, right?
Yes, actually, really quite close.
There's a plethora. I used the word plethora twice. Plethora of new characters. And the best part is that it doesn't get confusing, or it doesn't. How they spaced it out is quite nice, lah.
Yeah, I think it's quite, because Young Justice has always
A large cast, right?
a large cast, and they do have a lot. Well, not just the time skips between the seasons itself, right?
Yeah.
Like even within the arcs themselves, they take kind of a break. They don't tell you the full story. They kind of in media res, right? Like in the middle of the story, that's where they'll start. And I'm not sure whether it's because they expect people to have some foreknowledge of what is going on when they come in, but they use that to a very effective degree, I find. So much so that some of the more difficult parts of the story that they would have to cover from the comics itself, right, are conveniently left out, right? And I think that kind of helps with the flow overall without going too far or too deep into any one character in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. And I think it's also truly remarkable that Outsiders feels like a natural new season of a show that went off air in 2012. And also a totally new series designed for 2019's more complex political landscape.
Yeah.
I think, though at times it's it has this covert missions, its team is kind of splintered into many different directions. There is Batman Inc., there's our new group, there's a ton of new factions within our own factions lah. And it's also focusing on geopolitical crisis in a way that I haven't seen Young Justice do before. It almost, like I mentioned earlier, it almost feels like their version of Captain America Civil War. Especially within the first episode, where basically the team splits in two. Who do you go with, Batman, or do you go with Aqualad, who's the new Aquaman? I do have to say that Young Justice Outsiders deals with the day-to-day nitty-gritty of metahuman politics on an international and legal scale better than the MCU did. At least, it deals with it in more detail lah.
Yep.
I mean, this I feel like if you put the Flash's live action Flash idea of metahumans, this feels like a more expanded metahumans commentary lah. Right? I mean, we delve into the history of the metahumans. With Vandal Savage, with Darkseid and all the stuff,
and the current trafficking of kids,
and the current how the metahumans are being used as war soldiers lah, basically.
Not just on this planet but on other planets as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do have to say that their treatment, the small little 2-episode character arc for Black Lightning is better than anything the actual live action show has ever done.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. What about you, Isa? Any other thoughts?
I think just generally, Young Justice has brought back, right, what we've always loved from the series thus far, right? And at the beginning, I think pretty much everyone, oh no, we've got another like DC animated series for kids, but it turns out to be so much more than that. I think it's interesting the way that they've taken to, quite literally the term outsiders, right? And the whole idea of refugees and trafficking, definitely more reflective of our modern day context.
I mean, Halo, for example, it looks a lot like the modern refugee, the Muslim girl who's outcast.
And always dying.
And also you have, who was shot by a random European guy. Then you also have Forager, who is the cute member at this time. I love Forager. He's really adorable. He's
a new god, right?
He's not really a new god. He is a sub-bug species on New Genesis that is in conflict with the new gods.
Oh, okay.
Because of, obviously, they're of a lower class system.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Young Justice's cast is so ridiculously large, right? And this season's increasing focus on even villains' motivation, like you mentioned, Vandal Savage's backstory, for instance, makes the cast even larger. And so sometimes I feel like the focus is a bit disparate.
And
if the show didn't present itself 3 episodes at a time, that's how they were released. It wasn't 1 episode per week; it was 3 episodes per week.
Yep.
So that allowed for more cohesion with the story. So you didn't have to wait a week for random story and then random story and then a random story about the Green Arrows doing security, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Which was a fun comedy relief episode, but if I had to wait a week in between just to see that, I would have been pissed off. Yeah. So I mean, in conclusion, what are your thoughts about Young Justice season 3?
I mean, this is only half a season, right?
Yes. The next half of the season will pick up this coming June.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for this half of the season, so the mid-season finale, for example, wrapped up really nicely. Every character was given opportune moment to shine, lah.
Tough to do. Such a huge cast,
yeah. This is basically an ensemble cast, lah. I mean, all this been, lah, but this is like a really big ensemble cast.
Yeah, man.
Like when you have a whole 3 episode arc on like the light, and all that stuff, and still make it really, really engaging. I would never think that I would actually sympathize with Vendro Savage.
Neither did I. But it was a very good humanizing arc for him, right?
Yeah, correct. So anyway, all in all, Young Justice, I think after 6 years, has lived up to the hype, lah. I mean, we were really hyping for this show, lah.
A lot of people wanted it back desperately.
And I think DC Universe, right? That's the streaming service.
Yeah.
It really, really delivered, lah. Yeah.
How would you rate it?
I'll give it a good 7.5 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Final thoughts and a rating?
Oh yeah, I'm curious to see where they go from here. I do hope that they don't get buried under the weight of their cast, the FX spending cast. So I'm curious to see how they're gonna take the next half of the season. Whether they're gonna kind of like dive in and focus a bit more. That's what I'm hoping for. But so far so good. I've really enjoyed it, and it's a 7.5 for me as well.
Yes, I mean, I thought it balanced its many storylines very well, from the Markovia coup to the meta-human trafficking rings, to the light's nefarious / slightly noble agenda, to the looming threat of Darkseid, and of course Judas Contract, which we assume is coming up.
Next part,
and it did so very well in 13 episodes, and I'm very sure, as all previous Young Justice seasons have done, the final 13 episodes are just going to ramp up and be very climactic and quite epic.
Yep.
Cinematic confirm.
It's cinematic, yeah. So if this particular 13 episode arc felt incomplete, that's why it's only the first half of the season. I can't wait for part 2 of season 3. This show is so solid and so consistent. It's a 7.5 out of 10 for me as well.
Nice, unanimous 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, a very, very solid show. Perhaps not the best Young Justice season I've seen, but I mean, I haven't seen the full season yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really solid. We'll of course get back to it once Young Justice wraps up its season in around September, I think.
I think so.
So we will definitely get back to this.
Definitely.
We'll be talking about a lot of exciting returning series this month on this episode. And Young Justice is just one of them, lah. But as far as first seasons are concerned,
yes.
2019's first great new genre show is Netflix's Russian Doll, I feel. It is maybe not even just the first great genre show of the year, but I think the first great new show of the year, period. It's created by Natasha Lyonne, who you may recognize as Nikki from Orange is the New Black, and Amy Poehler, who is most famously from SNL and Parks and Recreation, obviously. Russian Doll is a new time loop dramedy in the vein of Groundhog Day. The series concerns Nadia, who goes for her 36th birthday party, only to end up dying and reliving the same day over and over again. First off, I have to say that what impressed me the most was that it manages to avoid the kind of tried and true tropes of time loop narratives to offer kind of a warm and fresh take on the Groundhog Day concept. It never feels repetitive, and every new reset brings new scenarios.
Correct.
It's quite acerbic in its writing, affecting emotionally, and also richly rewarding once, like its title implies, you peel back the layers of the titular Russian Doll, which is Natasha Lyonne's character Nadia. What do you guys think about the first season of Russian Doll?
Natasha's the character is quite, what's her name?
Nadia,
right?
Yeah.
Nadia is perhaps unforgiving. I mean, the way she's written is very like flawed, very, very truthful and real.
Yeah, I feel like I've met a lot
mean?
of these kind of like New York Jewish girls.
Yeah.
This kind of mix of like vulgar bravado and also this tender intelligence that she kind of exudes.
It's like on that very weird like line of likable and like I cannot stand this woman.
Yeah.
You know. But overall, the writing is solid.
Yep.
Throughout the entire season, it's very easy to watch.
8 episodes
Yeah.
at only 20 minutes.
Like this is what you call a binge-worthy show, lah.
For sure.
You know?
Yep.
Easy to binge. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Glow, you know. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't. Yeah, and the other thing is, I like that it was. I like the idea of it being nearly all women. Like the
Correct.
directors are all women.
Mm-hmm.
The creators are all women.
Writers, yeah.
I
Natasha Lyonne wrote this particular character and story. It's sort of based on her own life story.
yeah.
She, if you don't recognize her, she was. Yeah, I mean, without the time loop thing lah. But I mean, she suffered from addiction,
Yeah.
drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
If you don't remember, like back when she was 6 years old, she was actually a star on Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Oh,
Natasha
no.
Lyonne. And then she got some smaller roles as she grew up, and around her teens to her late 20s, to her early 30s, she actually disappeared for 15 years because of drug addiction.
Oh.
Went through rehab and all of that.
Okay.
So this is kind of her way to write about her life without being too personal,
That explains
while
the
while still addressing the same cycles of self-destruction that she faced.
okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that explains the cathartic nature of the whole series, lah.
Yeah.
yeah.
What about you, Isa?
Yeah. What about you?
I think it's such a compelling series, right? Because it's a train wreck that you can't look away from.
Yeah.
That keeps repeating itself
Yeah.
in various formats, right? And I just love that. As much as it was an easy watch, it was also extremely riveting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I sat down and cleared the entire thing at one go, right? And I feel like it does function a little bit better as one sit through than perhaps watching a couple episodes at a time. You know, I think the dialogue is great. I love the soundtrack. I think it's one of those things that really like the opening track. I can't remember what it's called, but that stuck with me for weeks after that, right? Just because of the number of times that we had to go through the beginning of that song.
Yeah.
You know, there's very little to complain about. Of course, this is just 1 out of 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Right, so I did take a little bit of issue. I understand that there's more to come and there's a lot of mysteries that need to be unraveled. I thought it was very neat for a time loop story so far. I'm curious to see how they extend that into other seasons. I wish there was a bit more closure with the finale. But as we discussed before, you were saying that it's more of an emotional closure than it is like an actual like plot closure.
I think without giving spoilers away with regards to her issues with her mother lah. And basically this season is just a character study on Nadia as a character and unraveling the layers of what makes her tick, her issues, you know, her cycles of self-destructiveness, which is, you know, a literal and physical metaphor of the time loop resets lah. And she's so stupid with time loops also. She keeps killing herself in the same ways. Like she never learns, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult for her to learn. But at the same time, also it feels like an emotional climax, but not necessarily a climax to the overall mystery or overarching mystery of what is these time loops lah.
Yeah.
And I think that will be explored in the subsequent seasons. I don't think they wanted to give it away so quickly.
Yeah.
But as a character study on Nadia and also of Alan, who is a character that we're introduced to in the 4th episode. I don't want to spoil how he's introduced because there is a major spoiler.
Yep.
But he's a very interesting character, so almost a polar opposite of Nadia.
Yeah, and I think the introduction of Ellen definitely helped to kind of even out just the character arcs. Once he comes into the story, I was a lot more interested to see how that goes how it will grow in complexity.
Yeah.
But speaking of her not learning, it's kind of ironic, right? Because she's a video game
Developer. Yeah.
And like if you were stuck in that, you would kind of know, right? Because that's what video games are basically about. No, just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
It's her issues lah.
The whole like replaying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you should have learned something,
Exactly. Like 5 or 6 times she dies the exact same way.
right? Exactly.
I know it's frustrating, but also like once you learn about a character, you kind of get
Why she's doing that, yeah.
you are really self-destructive lah.
Correct.
You know the way that she smokes.
So she can't help herself.
She can't help herself.
Yeah.
Exactly like this I think entire show is written very cerebrally and has a
Yes.
puzzle box mystery structure, but it totally hinges on Natasha Lyonne's performance.
Definitely.
I think without it, this show wouldn't be successful. It's a spectacular lead performance, and that's the real hook. You know,
Yeah.
it's I guess an existential character study.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, the show is about how people get stuck in all these self-defeating patterns and
Yeah.
repeating the same mistakes over and over again, as we mentioned. It's a metaphor for the cycle of addiction and how repressed trauma keeps you from growing. I think it's funny, it's addictive, surprisingly sincere despite Natasha Lyonne's cynical
Yeah.
cynical shell. Much like Nadia lah, with only 8 20-minute episodes, this is a very, very easy binge. And in a distinctly New York story.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it very compelling and easy to watch. So I think I would definitely highly recommend this.
Yeah.
It's a 9 out of 10 for me. Probably one of the highest rated shows I will talk about this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 9 too lah. I mean, it was close to perfection lah. In terms of everything. Like, I cannot name a flaw for this. Can barely name anything wrong with it lah.
Yeah.
If not, I'll just be nitpicking lah.
Yeah. The climax is maybe like, you don't find out what the mystery is.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, season 1.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Isa?
I'm going to give it an 8.5. I do feel that some of the episodes suffered from a bit of a pacing problem. It just lingered a bit too long on some parts. But I'm really nitpicking, and 8.5 is as high as I'm going to go.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm going to be talking about another kind of show with a similar premise later on. Almost exactly the same, to be
Death Day
honest.
to you?
Happy Death Day to you. But that will be in a segment called Quick Hits.
Yeah.
I will quickly run through that.
I didn't have time to watch that. So
Yeah. But speaking of diverging timelines and multiverses, let's talk about one of my favorite shows that I've discovered over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's called Counterpart. It's something that I was very, very high on last year. So high on that I reviewed it twice on the show. I reviewed it myself on Quick Hits, and then I forced my co-host to watch it. So that was season 1. Season 2 is back on Stars. I heard it's cancelled on Stars.
Not cancelled. I mean, this not renewed.
Not picked up,
Yeah, not
which
picked
is another word for cancelled. But the thing is, the good news is that Fremantle Media owns this particular show, so it's not
IP.
owned by Stars, so they could shop it around to Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or whatever network that they want to, so it can be saved.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't, I think season 2 was a good capper to what has been a masterclass show. I think Counterpart, with its escalating tension, masterful acting, and detailed spycraft, continues to make this sci-fi espionage series the unlikeliest successor to The Americans I've ever seen, especially in season 2. J.K. Simmons astonishes by adding layers to his dual roles as undercover agents from alternate universes, as both versions of Howard Silk increasingly become immersed in each other's lives and personalities. So whereas the first season was about them, showing the differences, this season I think it was trickier because both of them started to behave more like each other. Although you can see where the differences are, but they started blending into each other's lives as their environment became more similar.
I mean, because they were switched lah.
Exactly lah. But the true trick of season 2 is that Counterpart has become a true ensemble piece. It's no longer the J.K. Simmons show.
Story,
Correct, and all the actors have significant roles to play. Some of them surprisingly significant, but this is a spy show, so I don't want to spoil the twists or hidden agendas and double crosses. But I will have to say, like, even with its naughty conspiracies, clever counterintelligence, Counterpart remains emotionally grounded with beautiful character studies of nature versus nurture, and the spiraling effects of small choices. What do you guys think about season 2 and possibly the last season of Counterpart?
I want to talk about the attention to detail again for Counterpart. I love like how I mean, they already established it in season 1. Like the little differences in technology and all that in both sides. But like how the flu epidemic was the reason why like certain things had to be different lah.
Of course.
And had the focus was on medical science instead of like consumer technology, that sort of thing, and that's why they have different looking phones and stuff like that.
Actually, it all can be traced back to one particular cassette tape that the father refused to buy for a daughter.
Exactly.
But that's a spoiler in itself. I won't reveal how. But go ahead.
But apart from that, the world building this season, how they expanded onto the both Prime and Alpha was great. But the new characters involved this season, the whole Mira storyline, the whole
Mira tragic villain.
What the hell? The whole Emily, on both sides. The comatose ex-comatose Emily. And how like she's slowly figuring out like, wait, you are my husband. Like it was not very hard because like Howard Silk,
it was pretty obvious.
Like he doesn't cook.
In the midst of everything that she's trying to piece together about her life, there's some just glaring things, right? That's popular. But you didn't used to do that. You never spoke to me like that, Why don't you cook?
Yeah. You know, the kind of little. So that was like little nitbits I like. Even Peter Quayle's character had really significant growth.
We met Peter Cole from the other side also.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Wow. This season was just full of surprises and twists. It's very hard to talk about it without spoiling it.
Yeah.
So, but then what? It's a must watch. I'm just so sad that not many people have caught up to Counterpart. Like, it's still a relatively small audience that watches it.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't because of you we wouldn't have watched it. You know. So yeah, I'm glad that we found it, lah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that I can blame it on Stars because American Gods is a hit, you know.
Yeah.
But I guess it had an IP behind it, and Counterpart didn't. And Counterpart, like the Americans, the Americans, even with its Emmy nominations and stuff like that,
It was still a small audience.
I think it still has the same audience as Counterpart. I might even venture to say it's the same audience as Counterpart.
I mean, I was just looking through reviews and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like YouTube reviews, for example.
Yeah, it's very minorly covered.
Yeah, the number. I mean, there are people who cover it, but the numbers who watched it are really tiny, like thousands only.
Hundreds of thousands, yeah.
Yeah, not the millions that watch other big hits like Westworld, and the HBO things lah.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I think this season's highlight has to be episode 6, which is entitled Twin Cities.
Yeah.
It's the only episode of the show that breaks format to show us the experiment that split these two worlds.
Yep.
And uncovered the identities of management in the process. It was, I think, a beautiful and emotional episode that took us back to the very first change the scientist in charge, Yannick, made. Whether or not to give his daughter a present, which is a cassette tape. And the ripple effect spiraled from there.
Yeah.
Almost, like what you said, a butterfly effect. I won't spoil it, but the tragedy that occurs breeds distrust and competition, mainly because our animal instincts are engineered that way. It's very human. It's base human nature. Counterpart has always traded in Cold War analogies, right? I mean, it's shot like a Cold War show.
Yeah,
and Yannick's story is set in East Berlin in 1987, which, furthers that analogy even more, except this time it's a quantum metaphor. The lesson is that people on the other side, whatever other side that is, are exactly like us. But it's our nature to embrace differences and take sides, regardless of how similar both sides are, because this other side is literally the same as you, and you still take sides. And it's played all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in conclusion, what do you guys think about season 2? And, what are your hopes for season 3, if there are any?
Okay, quick one.
Yeah.
I just felt the last few episodes were slightly rushed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel like it was a bit
messy. It was
right?
messy. I did feel
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the only. I mean, it's still coherent storyline. Still good. Just felt a bit rushed. Like it was like ramping up to the ending lah, which you know that was coming in episode 10.
Yeah.
For season 3, I would really hope to see the consequences of the damn flu lah. I mean, sorry, spoiler.
Yeah. But I mean, that's definitely the one lingering cliffhanger.
That's all lah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you rate this season 2?
Sorry, excuse me. I'll give it a solid 7.5 too.
Okay.
No.
How about you, Isa?
I'm gonna give it an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Just generally because I you get a sense of like impending doom both within the story and the fact that that it hasn't been renewed, right?
Yep.
That kind of like put me in a weird headspace when I was watching it. And as well, like all the when this thing started to feel rushed, I really didn't quite enjoy it as much. There wasn't enough kind of like time and or space within the way that they shot it or the way that they were treating the outcomes to kind of look at the small things and the small details, right? Which is something that I've enjoyed thoroughly about this program. I really hope that in season 3 they continue with what they've done in terms of like how the characters that they've introduced and have grown and who may or may not survive. I hope to see a lot more of them. Like I really enjoyed Emily Alpha's arc. I really enjoyed Howard Alpha's arc in Prime. Well, those two were standouts for me, and all the side characters had really really good stories as well. And I want to see a lot more of that.
Yeah.
Even with the fallout that has happened.
Yeah. I think the last 3 episodes in particular, it felt like they learned they were cancelled.
Yeah.
And they were in a rush to wrap up maybe season 3 in the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, it could have been. Like, I did feel that way, and I hope that if they do get picked up again, that isn't something that forces them down a path that they don't want to be.
Correct. Hopefully, if they do get picked up, then they will know like, oh, we pick you up for 2 seasons or 3 seasons, so they know how to pace out their show lah.
Yeah.
Rather than learning that, oh, this might be the last 3 episodes we ever air, so let's try to wrap up and give as much closure as possible while still giving you one little nugget of a cliffhanger in case there is a new season lah. In any case, I still think this was a wonderful season. I thought it was 8 out of 10. With the highlight being obviously episode 6, which is Twin Cities. Next up, we have a new show. On Netflix this time. It is an adaptation of a comic book. Gerard Way's and Gabriel Barr's Eisner Award-winning comic, The Umbrella Academy, has been adapted into a live-action Netflix series. And for those of us who read the series, we were incredibly excited. The Umbrella Academy is a fairly unique superhero theme story with enough weirdness and eccentricity to stand out from the pack. Unfortunately, I feel like this live action series fulfills very little of its source material's promise.
Agreed.
Its attempts to capture the visual and narrative virtuosity of the comics, it feels half-hearted, and it all looks and feels like a try-hard Noah Hawley cover act. Meanwhile, its writing veers a little between unnecessarily vague and childishly ham-fisted. In the end, it's the same old found family overcoming childhood dysfunction, try to save the world that I've seen, a million times before. It wasn't the special thing that I was promised. I was incredibly disappointed and very bored. In fact, I actually gave up after episode 5, so I have not seen the full series.
Okay.
We got it.
Yeah, this is tedious in the way that a lot of Marvel Netflix is tedious.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, go ahead, you guys.
Okay, Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of not reading the source material.
Oh, okay.
So I came
Might play better for you.
Yeah, so it was fresh eyes lah.
Yeah.
So what happened was that when I watched it, I was like, okay, this is serviceable. You had a cast like
It was a good cast.
yeah, I mean you had Dickon from Game of Thrones
Yeah.
as the monkey boy.
Yeah.
Space boy.
Deacon.
Dickon.
Yeah.
You had
Ellen Page.
Ellen
Which
Page.
is the biggest star of all.
Adam Page, and a bunch of others. The thing was, it was a really interesting family dynamic because they all are adopted children, how they interacted with one another. So you start off as them as adults with flashbacks of them in the past, right? And the whole thing is piecing together the pieces from how they were so united and what caused them to fracture.
Yeah.
That sort of thing, and that's slowly discovered as the series went by. I think you're right where you said that it was a bit ham-fisted. A lot of the tropes, a lot of it felt very tropey. I don't think that's a word.
Yeah, it can be lah.
But you know what I mean lah.
Yeah.
It felt like I've seen this before. There's nothing special to it. And especially when you think about Legion Season 1, when you think about
Legends of
Tomorrow.
The ultimate weird show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the recently Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
When you look at all those shows and then you take a look at this one,
Yeah.
then when I watched it just without thinking of those other shows, it was serviceable at best.
Yeah.
But then
Because
when
you're comparing it to Marvel Netflix.
correct, right?
Because you're watching it on Netflix
yeah,
and
exactly.
you're like, oh, like, Luke Cage is like this.
So okay lah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
But then when I thought about it later, when Hidze was the one that raised it to me, and then I went on to like, oh yeah, when I watched Doom Patrol, right? And then I was like, is this all they could have done with this source material with these resources available to them?
Yeah.
The characters were already so weird,
Correct.
You could have done more lah.
You had that you had that drug addicted Klaus who sexually ambiguous. I mean, he's gay lah.
Sees dead people.
Hasn't unlocked his potential. So many things you could have done with that. The girl with the voice. See, I can't even remember their names. Alison, yeah. With her the whole rumor. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, Umbrella Academy, in the end of it all, it just felt boring.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what about you, Isa? Did you think it was boring as well?
Oh my goodness, it was actually painful to get through. I'm surprised that I made it to the end.
Yeah.
I think especially episodes 3 all the way up to episode 6, 7, 8.
Standard Netflix.
Yeah, it really, really got very, very drawn out. And I just felt like, source material aside, they did so little with the characters across so much time, right? And why couldn't they just lean into it?
Yeah.
You know, the acting was serviceable. Honestly, not one of Ellen Page's best roles, right? And at the end
Not
of the
really
day,
given much to do until the last 2 episodes, I hear.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that was okay, right? It served as a decent climax. You know, it wasn't
once all
anything-
the reviews happen,
yeah, but even then, right, that in and of itself was not enough. It is fantastical near the end, and it does reach close to the kind of visual elasticity that you get in the comic itself, but it's not enough. It was too little, too late, and I'm just wondering why they were twiddling their thumbs for much of the season. Not a fan. Honestly, not a fan.
I do agree. I feel like the real problem was that Netflix itself and the showrunner tried to ground the weirdness, and it grounded it to a drag. Now Gerard Way, right, has said across multiple interviews and multiple times that the primary source of inspiration for the Umbrella Academy was Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol run. In fact, Gerard Way actually wrote the latest Doom Patrol arc in DC Comics.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever read both Doom Patrol and Umbrella Academy can see the many similarities.
Yeah, for sure.
And I bristle at the many reviews that call Doom Patrol DC's X-Men.
Yeah.
Considering Doom Patrol came first. So, you know, do your research. Wikipedia is like a click away, guys. Coincidentally, Doom Patrol actually premiered on the same day as Umbrella Academy on 2 different streaming services, so more similarities there. Unlike Umbrella Academy, though, Doom Patrol embraces its eccentricity to tell something more bizarrely inventive. We'll be covering Doom Patrol in a couple of episodes once this season wraps up. So I urge you to watch Doom Patrol instead of Umbrella Academy.
Yep.
I think in conclusion, I will give this a 4 out of 10.
half a season.
Half a season.
Okay, I'll give it a. It's serviceable, so I'll give it a 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 4.
Okay.
It didn't pass for me. It was really very painful. Yeah.
I mean, but I had the benefit of not reading the source material.
Yeah. But even something like a 5 out of 10, I don't think it's worth 10 to 12 hours.
Oh,
of my
no,
life.
no. You can skip this.
Yeah, definitely. And I won't be watching season
And I
2,
mean, the content on Netflix, you have so many Legends of Tomorrow. Just to watch Legends of Tomorrow.
which is also on Netflix, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you got nothing better to watch Legends of Tomorrow.
I know. There are a ton of weird DC shows out right now, and Doom Patrol and Legends of Tomorrow are just, leaning into it. So that's great. Okay, that is the first half of our show. Next up, we have a very special interview with the director and cast of a beautifully crafted Filipino convent horror movie called Eerie. Here I speak to filmmaker Mikhail Red alongside his principal actors Bea Alonzo, Charo Santos-Concio, and Jake Cuenca for a wide-ranging interview about the technical craft of horror filmmaking and the social subtext of Eerie with regards to how mental illness, religion, and capital punishment is regarded in the Philippines, and of course much more. This was a roundtable interview conducted just before the movie's world premiere at the Singapore International Film Festival last month, so you will be hearing other voices outside of myself in this one, but I think, I have the best questions.
As usual.
Anyways, enjoy, and we'll catch you on the flip side. The genre of convent school horror is fairly popular, I guess, and this being your first horror movie, and judging by your previous work, it seems to me that Eerie might look to maybe subvert some tropes or even maybe kind of layer it with social commentary. What were the themes that you wanted to hit on with your first horror movie?
That's exactly what I always try to do. That's my philosophy as a filmmaker. I mentioned earlier in the talk that genre for me is a vehicle to reach a wider audience, but as a filmmaker you always have something important to say, and sometimes it's not that easy to say it, so you need a Trojan horse like genre. And for me, horror is one of the most accessible, especially for a Philippine local audience. So we did, and also at the same time, I like to challenge myself. So in every project I do, I try a new approach, a new genre, a new kind of treatment. And if you notice, Birdshot had some horror elements in it. So this time I wanted to go full-on horror, and I've stockpiled, a lot of influences and ideas. And I always use a very familiar premise to sort of set it up and make it easy for the audience to relate. But you're right. The goal is to subvert it. So they think they're seeing something, but they're only seeing the surface layer, which is, to entertain them. But as they go deeper, you reach the second act, the third act, you reach the deeper layers, you're actually there to engage them, not just entertain them. One of the subjects that we touch on is mental health awareness, which is very lacking in the Philippines. We're a very conservative majority is Catholic country, and a lot of elements in the script actually based on personal experience. Me, the writer, some of the cast, all grew up in these very traditional Catholic schools that don't really have that full understanding of these repressed kids and their mental health, and that's where Bea's character comes in, where she's in a way conflicted because she does psychotherapy, but at the same time she has the third eye and is sensitive to the supernatural. So that's her conflict. Like, what do you really believe in?
Interesting. Adding on to that question, so what do you think the Singapore audience can take away from your film? Especially since when you compare it to a Filipino culture, it's a different culture. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like we deliberately made sure that it's an international co-production. We have Singaporean partners. In fact, when we were pitching this, our intention was to find financing internationally, and it was just a chance encounter with Star Cinema. We were pitching this at the Bucheon International Film Festival, which is a big genre platform. We met them and they greenlit the project. Then we pitched it here last year at SAF. We got Singaporean partners. So the idea was to make a film that, again, would subvert horror tropes, would do well locally, but has legs internationally. So there's this deliberate design to it to make it universally appealing. So I would say that a Singaporean audience will appreciate it. I hope so. We'll see later at the premiere. But we want it to cross borders. We want it to feel like almost like a revival of classic Asian horror. It's not just Filipino horror. And even the way we designed it, the elements in the frame, the production design, the casting, the pan-Asian look of the cast, we want it to feel like an Asian horror film, not just a Filipino horror film.
Can I just ask, so it's sort of like a follow-up on all these questions. What is the process like at which you arrive at the first start of the idea of making, like, not just Eerie, but also like previous films like were shot? Like, because you mentioned you drew inspiration from a lot of different, like, from news or current happenings in the Philippines, and also from, I don't know, other areas in your life. So how is it that everything comes together for you?
It's really fusion. I said earlier that there's no original idea anymore, and it's the way you tell a story that makes it original. And for me, it's all about combining things. It's almost like cooking. You have different ingredients. Sometimes you would combine influences from Western cinema, but you set it in a Filipino environment and you tackle a very current issue. It becomes a whole new film. And for me, it's a combination of things. Sometimes, when I think of a scene, or I think of I'm disturbed by a certain news story, and then I shelve it, I keep it in my head. And then one day, sometimes you're in the shower, it all just snaps and clicks together, several elements, and then you have a story. But sometimes you realize it's not enough, it's just a premise, then you need time to develop it. So at any given moment, there's actually a bunch of ideas rolling around, and then sometimes they all just snap together and you have a complete film. So if you notice, like, every feature that I did is based on an actual news event, but it's still fiction. We make sure that it has commercial viability. At least it can travel, but at the same time, the challenge is to make a film that gets into genre festivals, that gets into competitive art house festivals, but can still do well locally. Because that, at the end of the day, you want to reach out to a local audience if you want social change. Because what's the point of your social commentary if you're preaching to the choir? To swing the vote, you need to reach the majority back home.
So I think a lot of you asked some questions. Perhaps I want to ask some questions to Charo, Bea, and Jake as well. Like for instance, what drew you to these roles and what inspiration did you take? Like Kel spoke a lot about like your inspiration for the film, but for the rest of you who were acting in it, like how did you get into the roles and how did you prepare for the roles maybe?
Bea.
Well, I grew up in a Catholic school also. I studied in a Catholic school. So I totally understand where the character is coming from. I know about these urban legends in a Catholic school. So that actually sparked my interest when I accepted the project.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I think the most challenging part for the film was really, for me, my character was the end. So it was more of like just creating this really dark headspace and isolating myself. And I knew that when I had read the script, I knew I had to do that. And again, like I said, it was what really why I accepted the film, because I saw an opportunity to really practice the method. There's a way to immerse myself and really just, like have an out-of-body experience with the character. So for me, it was the opportunity was right there, so I took it.
I like the story, I like the role, and I wanted to work with Nick.
My question is actually a follow-up on Gabriel's as well. This is directed to the cast. What was the hardest part that you had? What was the hardest thing that you had to go through to get into character, and what was the easiest?
Without spoiling anything.
For me, the hardest was working with Miss Charo Santos.
Yeah, working with your boss.
I have such a huge respect for her as an actress, and I've always wanted to work with her. So I think that's the hardest. And I don't think there is an easy scene for me. I mean, like the whole movie was hard for me because everything's so heavy somehow.
For me, was to me the hardest part of the film. Again, aside from working with your boss, and can't be late today, but can't be late. No, but I think it was being very unapologetic at certain times. Certain times where I knew I was in the wrong, but I was very much in character, that I just hoped for the best in the end, that no one was gonna get mad, but then it was being at certain points being unapologetic for certain things that happen in the scene.
But why did you apologize to me after that?
In character. In character. No, but once we they said it's done, pack up, then we can just totally be normal again.
It was
and
very
apologize in the end.
They make it sound like working with a boss seems like
It was a dream
It was a dream come true.
Really, I'd love to do it again.
A mother superior.
Yes.
it's really getting my confidence from my director and from my co-stars. It's a collaborative effort. Filmmaking is a collaborative effort, and when you know that you're with a team, even the most difficult becomes a go with the flow kind of an experience.
On the flip side of casting, were these particular actors what you had in mind when you wrote the movie, or was there actually a casting process? And if so, what interested you in these particular actors and actresses?
Like I mentioned, when we first pitched it, we had no idea it was going to be produced by a major studio.
Sure.
But as soon as they greenlit the project, to be honest, they're all my first choice.
Right.
And when we sat down with Santos, who's also the producer, we had to brainstorm the cast, and everyone that we picked in that meeting. Yeah, and at the same time, that's what I guess working with the studio provides, because my previous films are financed with soft money from competitive grants. But with working with the studio, the advantage is, it's much faster. We got the script to screen in a year. We were pitching in Singapore at this exact time, and then now it's premiering. Birdshot took 2 years, so it takes more patience to make a film like that. The advantage with working in the studio is they have the resources, they have the roster of stars that help attract local audience, aside from being dedicated and talented. And they have the machinery to actually promote it, and that people are actually going to watch your film. It's going to stay in theaters longer with more cinemas, more screens, more eyes, and more ears. At the same time, it's something new even for the studio, because they have international partners. Star Cinema, they do a lot of films that focus on the local market, but this time they're exploring these kinds of hybrid films where they team up with an independent filmmaker with the hopes of crossing borders as well, partnering up with financiers from Singapore. So it's something new, and that's why we're all excited. We don't know what's going to happen once we release it next year, but we're hoping for the best. And hopefully, if this works out, we can do more sort of films like this and slowly build an audience back home, develop taste and elevate the genre.
For some of you, it's your first time working with the horror genre. So what are like the differences between working with the horror genre versus the other types of genres that you've done?
I mostly did love stories, mainstream love stories, so this is a totally different process for me, but I really enjoyed it. I think the difference is you have more control over your character. I mean, I grabbed at least my emotional continuity on the movie, so yeah, I enjoyed it.
No, I've done horror films in the past, but for me, I think, I just like what I said earlier, despite the film being a horror film, it was such a happy set. You just laugh. I mean, it was heavy emotions that you're carrying around the whole day, but then really like when they're setting up, we're all just laughing, and it was such a fun process. So to me, and Direct Mick runs such a tight ship. Everything was so organized, it was so easy to work on this film. So for me, rather than maybe that's what made this experience very different as to the other films that I've done. This was so organized. It was a tight ship.
And also, we were locked in one location the entire 20 days, so it helped us get in touch with our real emotions as a character.
I've gone full circle. My first movie was a horror.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, what is it like? It can be creepy.
happy haunted set.
What's your memory of when you compare it with your first movie and right now?
Oh, I didn't. I was very new. I was so naive then. Thank God I was given the role of a provincial lass who didn't know much about life. I think I know more about my craft. Yeah, after being in the industry for 2 decades as an artist, and also having gone also to the other side of the fence, which is producing. So I think I'm much older, so I have a better grasp or appreciation of the dark side, the philosophies, the different philosophies of life, and it just brings a lot more texture to your craft.
Can I just follow up on the question? So for Bea, because you're new to the genre, right? So how do you actually, and you mentioned that it's quite hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you actually get into the role? How was your practice like?
It was really Mick who helped me throughout the movie. I mean, I read the script, but each time I have a question, I would ask him, and he would readily answer my questions.
No, this is actually directed to Mikhail again, and I wanted to ask, because your films have been through the festival circuit, you were a festival circuit kid throughout your previous filmographies, and now onto this one with with studio money and with a lot of international money inside, and having been through BFUN, SAFF, were there any compromises that you had to do to your vision to get it to where it is today? Did the Eerie in your mind look the same as the Eerie that we're going to watch later, or did you have to adapt, compromise, change?
I wouldn't call it compromises, but in every film that I make, there's always adjustments. You never get 100% what's in your head. The film in your head is always going to be perfect. It's the perfect cinematography, perfect location, perfect acting, the perfect lines. And then when you start to write it, it's like 80% left. And then you shoot it, it's like with more realistic factors coming in that you can't really predict. It's now 60%, you edit it's 40%. So I think that the trick is, I always tell other students in workshop, is you have to dream big. So by the time the film in your head, the perfect film in your head gets onto screen, it's still big enough. So in every film, even with my more, you would label it maybe more art house films, we had to adjust, because of budget, because of logistics. Like we would go to a certain location, it wasn't what we expected. So there's always adjustment, and I think that's what makes a good director. When not just working outside the box, but when you work inside the box, when there are restrictions and limitations, that's where your skill comes in as a director. It's when I always say this example that when the sun is setting and you have 3 shots to do, but you can only take 1, it's that decision that defines you as a director. It's not what you show, but what you don't show, what you take out of it. So, yes, I would admit that in every project, even in a script, you start with draft 1 and then you end up with several drafts. There's always going to be change. Film is very malleable, and I guess the trick is to be clear with your objective. Every project must have a precise objective. You know what you want to achieve with the film, so you can articulate it to the rest of your team, and so you're all on the same boat. Without having that clear objective, if you don't really know what you're doing with this film, that's when it starts to become a mess. So as long as you're honest with yourself and you know the objective, it's adjustments. It's part of the filmmaking process.
In general, over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, the horror genre has had a huge renaissance lately. From the art house stuff like Hereditary or The Witch, or even mainstream stuff like The Conjuring or whatnot. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, it's a very technical genre, and I guess as a filmmaker, as a craftsman, you really enjoy it. It has to be precise. It has to be deliberate. To create a scare, it's quite complex. It's almost like a magic trick. You're like an illusionist. There's a setup. There's a concealed information. You reveal it, and then there's a twist. And that alone is something very interesting, and that attracts a lot of filmmakers. You get to make a glossy film as well, because horror, it has a lot of these camera movements, these very like Haunting of Hill House, episode 6.
The 23-minute sequence. It's fucking nuts.
It's something that really attracts a lot of filmmakers that are into the craft, and at the same time, it gives you a platform, an opportunity, or a vehicle to to smuggle in your social subtext. It's the type of genre that can really contain all those layers and not feel forced. So it's the perfect vehicle, and it makes money. So it's sustainable. So it's a logical choice for a lot of artists and filmmakers who want to express something, but at the same time create something more sustainable and something that's actually feasible for people to finance. So I guess that's why, and audience appreciate horror, and it's very universal. So it crosses borders. A scare is scary no matter where you show it, because it's very visual. So it's the perfect genre to sort of be in the middle of it, to be a hybrid film.
That makes sense.
So Mikhail, can I ask you, which films were you inspired by in terms of horror?
Well, I mentioned earlier in the talk that if it's your first time doing a genre, and you're a filmmaker, you're a film enthusiast, you're a movie buff, what happens is you have a lot of ideas stockpiled, and because it's your first time in that genre, you gotta sort everything out, which to use, which not to use, which one you should change, to make it more original, and then fuse everything, but put it in a local milieu, a local setting that you're actually familiar with, and you create something new. A lot of my influences are, of course, the classic Kubrick, but I also like a lot of modern Asian horror. Of course, it's a very, might be a cliche answer, but I really like Ring. It has this certain structure without, having too much jump scare, relying on jump scares. It has this mystery that sustains you, and it has this structure where there's a deadline, so there's constant impending doom, and it keeps the audience engaged. And yeah, that's one of my favorite horror films, and also a lot of the A24 films. I mean, I'm sure every filmmaker references the A24 films.
So do you plan to dabble in any other genres? Because most of your films right now are of like the thriller, horror genre. So.
I'm doing a zombie movie with Star Cinema. I'm doing a youth kidnap film. a kidnapping film in a school. And then I'm doing an international series with fantasy action elements, but I can't disclose that.
With all the projects that you just listed, what is like really next for you? Or are you doing them all concurrently?
I guess the one that we might finish first is the high school kidnappings.
Right. Are you aware of when Eerie will be getting a wide release in Singapore in particular?
So we're still trying to decide. We're waiting on a few more factors, but it's definitely first quarter of 2019.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So that was our interview with the cast and director of Eerie. I had a blast talking with them, and I came away very impressed with Mikhail Red in particular, for someone so young to be so talented and so thoughtful. He's certainly becoming one of my favorite Southeast Asian genre filmmakers, alongside the likes of Joko Anwar from Indonesia, for example. If you missed the screening of Eerie at SGIFF, fear not, because the film will soon be released in Singapore and the Philippines later this month. It'll be released on the Philippines on March 27th. It'll be released in Singapore on March 28th. So in the coming weeks, please check it out. I thought this was a really good film and a solid recommendation for me. It's a 7.5 out of 10.
Nice.
Next up, we'll be covering a couple of animated sequels. Firstly is the final chapter to DreamWorks Animation's, in my opinion, best franchise, How to Train Your Dragon. This third installment, called The Hidden World, is, I think, visually marvelous and emotionally poignant, and I greatly enjoyed it. It's Dean DeBlois's final run with the story, and I think he has run out of story.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he basically repeated the same story.
from How to Train Your Dragon too. It recycles that plot for sure. That's why I'm glad that it's ending while it's still soaring before it repeats even more.
Ooh, soaring.
But yeah, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is poignant, but I think it works better as a third chapter than as a movie.
Right.
Like as an individual movie, I might not have rated it this much if I had not seen the last couple. But I think it was a nice wrap up to a long running storyline. What do you guys think of How to Train Your Dragon?
Okay, I mean, he really said visually stunning, right?
Yeah.
Because if you watch the past two movies and you see the growth of Hiccup and the gang and his dragons and their dragons, I mean, okay lah, it's a sweet story lah. You know it. This is based on the book, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't
Never
read
read
the
the book.
source. I mean, it's a kid's book if I'm not wrong. Yeah. But I think DreamWorks has. I mean, they really milked it lah. With 3 movies.
like they milked the other franchise, Shrek.
That was even worse.
Yeah.
You know, this one 3 movies. I think this is the last. There's no more, right?
It should be the end.
Yeah. I actually enjoyed this story, even though it's similar to the previous story. I preferred this story in terms of like the villain. He was a bit smarter, you know, with his scorpion dragons.
Yeah.
With the acid.
This is good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know the lore of How to Train a Dragon, except they're dragons lah. And the whole love story between Toothless and the
Bright Fury.
Yeah. That was kind of sweet lah.
Yeah.
You know, and how he tries to court her.
It's for the kids to go,
You know. But overall, I think I miss Gerard Butler's portrayal of Hiccup's father.
For sure.
Who only, I think, had like 2 or 3 lines lah.
Flashbacks
lah, yeah. But that's about it. Yeah,
might not even have been new lines actually. It
might be recycled lines. Yeah. I'm not too sure. Didn't see much of his mom. I mean, there were parts of, you know, where she was there, but it felt like there was no.
But I think the mom's arc was finished already.
Yeah, I guess so.
Part 2,
you know. But overall, everybody kind of, there was not much character growth left.
Yeah.
You know, Hiccup was already grown up. He already went through his trials.
Yep.
This movie was okay. It was fun to watch.
Yep.
It was definitely a good, like what you say, a good closer, good tie up to this series. And I don't want to see another one.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
What about you, Isa?
I mean, I echo the same sentiment, right? As a third installment, definitely a lot of feels, right? We've already invested like 3 movies worth of time following these characters. Not much of a growth arc for any of them. I mean, the coming of age story for all of them came in the second movie itself. You know, the visual appeal of what they're doing this time around, definitely they've upped the ante a bit. I think they kind of knew as well that they couldn't really bring anything else to the story.
Except for better technology, which exists now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like, just some of the flying scenes and things like that, and just the landscape and all that.
Landscape,
it's gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
And I think those moments were good enough just for me to kind of forget the fact that they were just giving me the same story all over again. But as a standalone movie, I wouldn't even watch this as a standalone movie, if it wasn't for the fact that it was a sequel. I think anyone who hasn't watched the first two movies and came into this would be very lost and very disappointed because
a lot of implied history.
Yeah, a lot of implied history is one thing. But in addition to that, like, it doesn't fit well. Rehashing the second story with a slightly different twist and a new villain doesn't necessarily gel towards the final portion, right, into Act 3. And I think, like, after I was done with, like, that was a great story over 3 movies, it kind of sank in that, okay, it was a good movie. It wasn't great. But overall, great franchise, I feel. Yeah.
I would rate it 6.5 out of 10.
Same, 6.5.
Yeah, same here.
I think it's a recommendation for sure. Not great and it doesn't quite soar to the heights of the first
If
movie.
you didn't watch the first two, don't need to watch this one.
I would actually just recommend going on Netflix to watch the first one.
Oh yeah, which is on Netflix.
Yeah, which is an amazing, I guess, probably I think the best DreamWorks movie ever besides Shrek lah. The first Shrek. Before that was also milked to death. Next up we have another sequel. This one is the Lego Movie 2, subtitled The Second Part. Okay, so I do have to talk about the Lego Movie first, right? Because when it came out, it was such a surprise.
Yeah.
People thought it was going to be like, the Emoji Movie, that type of rubbish, right? But it turned out to be, very audacious, very insanely creative, like absolutely hilarious. Everything about it was awesome, which kind of shocked everyone when it came out, right? Who knew that such a silly concept could be executed so geniusly? But now that the concept has played out across 4 different movies, including Batman, the Lego Batman movie and the Lego Ninjago movie, the novelty has worn off a little. And the franchise also has that impossibly high bar to live up to. That being said, Lego Movie 2 is still good and very, very, very funny. Filled with clever jokes, the usual meta shrewdness, and a heartwarming lesson about, selfish boys and their toys. The best of Phil Lord and Chris Miller's script continues to be their comic book meta jokes, which I think is something they've specialized in. The Queen's reverse psychology on Batman, for example, such a great bit, as was their duet song, which was the best song this particular time. You can tell that Lord and Miller are huge comic book geeks given their work on the Lego Batman movie and Into the Spider-Verse, which, recently won the Oscar. So they always nail it when it comes to crafting fantastic comic book or superhero jokes. That being said, I feel like as a whole, this movie underwhelms a bit because the initial spark of ingenuity from the first film has been recycled too many times now. What do you guys think about the Lego Movie 2?
I mean, okay, sorry. Okay, because Batman was a standalone story.
Lego Batman, yeah.
And Ninjago also was a standalone story.
Yes.
We don't have the same kind of universe implications that Lego Movie 1 and 2 had.
This is a direct sequel to Lego Movie 1.
So you had that whole overarching, the sister growing up, playing in the third. That's why there's the father not caring about them messing up the town anymore. So that's why it's like an apocalypse. I mean, that was the scenario that was given that the boy was trying to do. Correct. And the sister's invasion, with the Duplo toys, and then and what I really liked was how as she grew up, like the toys became more complex, right? The ideas that she was bringing in were becoming more complex
Than her brothers, actually.
In a way, with the whole idea of equality and love and all that stuff. Interesting, But I like the whole duality between Danger. What's his name?
Who's what?
Emmett's doppelganger.
Oh, the other Chris Pratt. Yeah.
It was hilarious because all the things that he did, right? He was like a archaeologist. He was like a raptor trainer. It was like all the Chris Pratt roles, right?
Felt like a Parks and Rec Chris Pratt versus Chris Pratt after.
Yeah, but then it was like correct.
Post Guardians Chris Pratt.
Yeah. It was interesting lah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that dynamic was cool.
Also meta, very cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then really nice visuals. They continue the tradition of really making Lego pop on screen.
Yeah, I felt like buying Legos, right?
Yeah, exactly. After the movie, that's what I said to you all, right? I really want to buy Legos. Like, this really worked. Yeah. Lucky I had not enough money to buy Legos at the time lah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the premise was fine. The overarching story was great. I feel that I'm less severe on it than you are lah. I feel that it is not yet really overused because I feel that the Ninjago and Batman movies were kind of very different than the Lego movie one lah. Same graphics and all that, but like
Same jokes also.
Ish.
Yeah.
I feel. I still could tell that. I mean, I could still. I don't know. I feel that it was different enough.
Yeah.
That it didn't really affect how I watched Lego Movie 2.
Alright.
Yeah, that's why.
Cool.
I think that's why I'm more favorable towards it.
What about you, Isa?
I feel that, especially for the first half of the movie, right, it was largely just a sequence of jokes, right? And the whole idea of inserting that into a kind of world building was problematic for me. Like, sure, you gave me a bit of world building, this whole like post-apocalyptic thing, a mix of Mad Max meets, the gritty ass Batman in BVS, right? And you got all of that, but it was solely carried by a sequence of jokes.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that took way too long. Right? It took them 2 acts to kind of get to the Lego movie that I wanted to see.
Okay.
Or at least the emotional core of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I that to me was extremely problematic. Like, the jokes are great. The relief is great. I feel like Phil and Miller have done a great job with all of that, but it just didn't have the kind of compactness that I wanted that we saw in the first movie, or even in Lego Batman, for example. Just generally, it reached points where things got a little annoying for me. But all in all, with enough laughs, I became a bit more forgiving of it.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a good sequel, but nothing remotely close to the first Lego movie.
Yeah, I felt you're right. Structurally, the main narrative thrust doesn't kick in until the midway points, at least. So the first half felt rudderless. But it was carried through, many funny side gags, many funny jokes, a lot of clever references, which tickled my geek brain lah. And I thought, like, when it did come to the third act, it wrapped up the emotional crux of the story very well, very poignantly. So that saved this movie for me lah. So I would rate it a 7 out of 10.
I mean, one more thing is how Lego actually just brandishes all their IP at one time.
Yeah, it's just flexing.
Yeah.
They just flex all the time.
Look at all these movies. You can't do this, and then you have Gandalf here. You have the basketball players. You have the Ninja Turtles, and etc. etc. So I will give this apart from the product placement, which is very obvious, which is very also very well. They all know. They all lean into it. I'll give this a 7.5.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna give this a 6.5.
Interesting.
Okay. No. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I give it a 7. She's in the middle of both of you guys.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
we have about similar takes on
It
this
averages
movie
out lah.
Yeah, I do have to say though that Marvel took out their properties from this one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't have the full flex.
They didn't have the full flex.
It's some of it lah. Next up, we'll be talking about a surprisingly successful manga adaptation called Alita Battle Angel. This is Robert Rodriguez's, easy for me to say, Robert Rodriguez, his latest film, and it's based on obviously Battle Angel Alita. Is that what the manga is called?
Same. I think it's the same title.
Gun, actually.
Oh, it's not the
It's
same
called
title.
Gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
GUNNM. But yeah, I mean, like, essentially, it's popularly known as Battle Angel.
Okay. So I mean, I think back when I was in my secondary school or poly days, that's when the manga first came out.
Yep.
And I think it got really huge then. I mean, I was familiar with her character design, the big eyes and everything. Although I didn't read the manga, so I wasn't familiar with the story. And I think it's safe to say that this is Robert Rodriguez's best movie since Sin City.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's not that high of a bar, to be honest lah. Alita is absolutely entertaining. It really is. It's so fun. And it feels on like basic things that I usually harp on, like storytelling and dialogue and character development and plotting. But fuck all that lah. It's fucking fun, sir. I mean, the action sequences are so phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's badass, it's kick-ass, it's fluid, and it's inventive. And most importantly, what I want from an action-driven movie, because this is not a story-driven movie or character-driven movie.
Nope.
This is an action-driven movie, and what I want from this is coherent action sequences. Coherent, you can follow the action, you can go wow at specific. It's not like the Michael Bay, bro step, shaky cam, metal everywhere kind of thing. Yeah, that's all I really want from this kind of like dumb, big, silly blockbusters. I want that kind of action, and if you can deliver that kind of action, I'm gonna love it, because that is what you're going for. This isn't Moonlight, or whatever. This is it's not going for that kind of artistic thing, lah. This is more towards like Bad Boys. So I mean, I love Bad Boys.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
We have the whole thing.
Yeah, we have this whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, and especially because I was unfamiliar with the anime and manga, I was very engaged with the world building. I was taken in by its cyberpunk retrofuturistic setting. I like learning about Alita's backstory. I like learning about motorball as a sport, which is just basically Tron meets roller derby.
Yeah.
Um.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I guess for the record, like Alita's huge eyes, the controversy about that is for naught, because I thought they weren't distracting at all in context.
Yep.
It actually feels natural in motion. We avoided the uncanny valley, and I think a large part of that is down to Rosa Salazar's outstanding mocap work, because I thought that she emoted very well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I surprisingly love this movie. What about you guys?
Oh. Well, okay. Definitely, this is one of the better movies out there during that period of time. Huh?
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
But damn it, the graphics, right?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you always say, the mocap capture and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But almost everything, like even the side villains, like the guy with the sword.
Oh, Dario, the original Dario.
Dario, yes.
Yeah.
Dario Naharis
Yeah.
in better armor.
Yeah. Only
yeah.
in one episode of Game of Thrones.
A
couple. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, anyway, original Dario was great. He had that very sleazy
X-Crine is his name.
X-Crine, yes, who was also Ajax in Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Anyway, he was great. With that very sleazy, very cocky, toxic masculine kind of villain.
Honestly, he had one of the best acting.
But
in the movie.
Alita's movement was so perfect, right? It was graceful. You had the full cinematic fight scenes.
Yeah.
Where you're right. There's no shaky cam, no bullshit taken kind of cutscene kind of thing.
More like the Raid or John Wick.
Exactly.
But with more CGI, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
But when the CGI is done so well, right, it's great. I mean, that girl, the one of the villains with the scythe hands thing,
Yeah.
right? That fight scene was great.
Yeah.
Right,
it
when
was.
Alita was discovering that she can fight.
Yeah.
The world building was awesome. Story was just balls to the walls action.
Yep.
Right, and it was not overly gratuitous.
Sure. Yeah.
It was just nice. Just everything was.
It still felt purposeful. Right?
Yeah, it was a beautifully made movie, lah. You're right. Not much on the plot. Don't care about the loopholes and all that stuff. Never mind.
Don't care.
But when the manga creator loved this movie, where he watched it multiple times,
So rare, right? Yeah.
right? Where he said, "Yeah, this is the perfect movie."
Yeah.
Then I mean, I agree with him, lah. Yeah. I mean, in terms of action and all that, not perfect movie and everything, lah, but perfect movie when it comes to action.
Yes. What about you, Isa? Who's actually read the manga, by the way?
Oh, it's still ongoing, by the way. So I haven't finished it. I'm not as caught up as I would like to be. But I was extremely excited when they announced this movie. I left the cinema after watching Alita, feeling as though I had one of my favorite mangas had become an anime.
Yeah.
Right? It was a live action movie, but it evoked the same kind of feeling when I've been following a manga for a while and they announced hey, we're going to turn this into anime, and I'm sitting down and I'm just finished the first season of that. That's what it felt like, right? Even the fact that the story's not great, the acting's not great, the dialogue is so bad at certain points. Yeah, right? I was okay with that because in the same way I would be forgiving of an anime adaptation of one of my favorite mangas. That's fine, right? Sometimes the voice acting isn't great. Sometimes, they mess up the storyline, all that. I just wanted to see these things leap off a page, right? And go into motion. And to have done it in such a beautiful poetic way on screen, I can forgive everything else. And that to me was that was the experience for me, right? Just being able to see it come to life was more than enough, right? And for it to be that great on top of that, just made it for me. it's one of those things. I think Alita is one of those things, especially if for those of you who have read the manga, you come to realize that even though the story arc and all that, the setting itself actually deals with a lot of very existential issues and questions about technology and identity, and what's right and what's wrong, what's the moral philosophy behind using a particular new brand of tech and things like that, much like Ghost in the Shell did. But I think for Alita Battle Angel, that never reaches the surface, right? And I'm not sure if it's because it's a Hollywood adaptation, much in the same way the Ghost in the Shell Hollywood adaptation never dealt with the deeper things that they did in the anime itself. So I'm not sure if it's that. But at the same time, Alita...
Or maybe it's just an introduction.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's very obvious setup for sequels, right? Which I am really hoping for.
Yeah, Ed Norton at the end.
Yeah.
Look at me, I'll be in a sequel, hopefully, if this makes money.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been doing very well.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping for a sequel as well.
It's doing poorly in America, but it's doing very well in Japan and elsewhere. Where manga lives.
Where manga lives, yeah. So, I'm hoping to see more of that. And hopefully, they are able to go a little bit deeper in terms of like the tone and how they want to do that. It was just a very good introduction
to the world,
to that particular world, and I was happy with it for sure.
I mean, one of the downsides is a complete waste of now 2-time Oscar winner Mahershala Ali.
Oh my god,
yes.
Yeah. Who what did he win the Oscar for this movie? Oh no, it's the other movie, which also shouldn't have won the Oscar. But I guess I will say that this is actually surprisingly a 7.5 out of 10 for me. I really love this.
I'm gonna give it an 8.
Oh snap!
I'm gonna give it an 8.
Yeah.
It's so rare for an manga or anime adaptation to hit this kind of stride, right? And I think that deserves to be celebrated.
I mean, so many live action manga
failures.
Anime failures out there.
Yeah.
So this was like what you said lah. Fresh breath of fresh air lah.
Yeah. I mean, high ratings from all of us. I mean, go watch this in the cinema. It deserves to be seen on a big screen.
I agree.
For sure.
Yeah. Next up, I will be talking about a bunch of movies and TV shows that my colleagues here have not seen yet. It's a little segment called Quick Hits, and we'll be covering a bunch of kind of the smaller titles that maybe are not big enough to cover in depth, but notable as well. Firstly, I would like to talk about Happy Death Day to You. Okay, I mean, now stop me if this sounds familiar, right? A girl wakes up on her birthday, and she is facing a crisis because her birthday brings up long dormant issues with her mother. But even as she tries to enjoy her birthday party, she suddenly dies, and then she wakes up again, destined to relive the same day over and over again until she can figure out a way not to die. And as a result, perhaps she could use the opportunity to resolve some self-destructive cycles and her issues with her mother. If this sounds like the plot to Russian Doll to you, it's not. It's actually from a movie that came out 2 years before Russian Doll called Happy Death Day. Happy Death Day is actually really interesting because it kind of meshes together two different types of movies. First is the slasher movie, a self-aware slasher movie like Scream, and of course the most obvious is Groundhog Day. So it was built as Scream meets Groundhog Day, and now I know like a lot of people love Russian Doll, as I do, but I think it borrows a lot from Happy Death Day, surprisingly. The original Happy Death Day back in 2017 was such a pleasant surprise. What I assumed to be another derivative slasher flick about a killer on campus turned out to be quite clever, quite endearing, and an immensely fun horror comedy. This sequel once again bucks expectations by once again introducing us to a bunch of wild, audacious twists into its time loop premise. It's evolved from horror into a full-on sci-fi adventure romp. It expands with a new, get this, multiverse murder mystery, because what you get with time loops is different timelines, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's also rooted in, although it's about weird quantum physics, Star Trek beep bop, which you don't really need to understand. It's usually the guy who's like the flux capacitor is so therefore okay, whatever, right? But it's also very rooted in a lot of emotional stakes. Okay, so it actually begins, and I'm not going to spoil anything that isn't already spoiled in the trailer.
Okay.
It begins with a minor character from the first movie, who is this Asian kid who turns out to be working on this quantum physics thingamajig for his science project. Now he's the one being killed, and the day resets for him. So he goes to the only person he knows that has had this kind of thing, which is Tree, who is the lead character from the first movie. As we can figure out, the time loops are actually a result of his machine, and Tree ends up helping him out because of course, experience with this type of thing lah. Now this is the first major first act twist.
Okay.
But it's revealed in the trailer for some reason, so I'm very pissed off by that. It turns out that the killer who's killing the Asian kid is the Asian kid from an alternate dimension. And because time loops, different timelines, he's trying to stop this Asian kid from activating his machine lah. As they're trying to stop this Asian kid, Tree herself gets knocked into a parallel timeline, and she has to figure out how to get out of the timeline. But also in that timeline, it has a similar murder mystery to the first movie. And because she's knocked back to the same day as the first movie, her day is again resetting.
Oh my goodness.
So she has to figure out how to stop the time loop, stop the new killer. Because this is a parallel timeline, motivations are different, motives are different, characters are slightly different, history is a bit different. So it's a new killer with a new set of circumstances. She has to figure that out too. She has to go back to her original timeline and then fix that. So it's bonkers. It really goes so far away from the premise of the first movie that I was very surprised by how ballsy this was. It's really crazy. I mean, the emotional crux of the movie though, and it kind of hinges on this, is that in the alternate timeline, in our main timeline, Tree's mother is dead lah.
Right.
That's her issue, and she dies on her birthday. In the alternate timeline, Tree's mother is alive, which gives her pause as to whether she wants to go back to her original timeline or not. And I think it's an emotional beat that's quite explored quite well, and quite it made me cry. Much like the first movie, surprisingly made me cry towards the end. So that's the major conflict, and keep in mind, guys, this is just the first act, and then things get weirder from there. There are more conceits and more time travel things that's going on, so it's pretty wild that a horror slasher has turned into this. A huge part of why Happy Death Day to You succeeds is because of its lead actress Jessica Rothe, who is just incredible. She's has this irresistible energy. She pulls off scream queen, rom-com lead, dramatic anchor, and badass heroine each very well. There are many bonkers directions this franchise goes to, but it would not work if Rothe wasn't so multifaceted and goddamn talented.
Yeah.
The script is wild with great ideas, across multiple genres. But the thing is, despite its brilliant concepts, it actually isn't written very well.
It sounds messy.
Yeah, it sounds messy, and it's up to Jessica Rothe to make it work, to make us invested in what she does. And oh boy, she does. You're so invested in her character and specifically her performance. If the first was Scream meets Groundhog Day, this is pure Legends of Tomorrow.
Okay.
The only show that I can even remotely comes close to this and does this on an episodic basis is Legends of Tomorrow. This feels like a Legends episode, and if you think that's an insult, it's not. I love Legends of Tomorrow.
Okay.
Now one key point is that you have to watch the first movie for this movie to make sense.
Alright.
A lot of major plot points hinge on very minor details from the first movie that you might forget, or you will forget. But if you watch this back to back, right, it's so rewarding.
Okay.
And it much like how Russian Doll Season 1 doesn't quite uncover the mystery of the time loop, Happy Death Day, the first movie, did not at all address why the time loop is happening. She just solved who the killer was and stopped herself from being killed, and then the time loop was broken, but you don't know why the time loop exists or whatnot.
Right.
But this one explains everything and broadens its world, plural worlds, into many incredible sequels that it can do. It's just branched out its universe and lore so well. This is 8.5 out of 10 for me. I really love Happy Death Day to You.
Wow. Okay.
And the first movie was an 8 out of 10, so I really love that as well. So yeah, highly recommend Happy Death Day to You. Watch Happy Death Day first. I can't emphasize that enough. Next up, we'll be talking about the second season of The Dragon Prince, created by Avatar The Last Airbender's Aaron Izas. The first season of The Dragon Prince, which I watched completely, was a promising all-ages fantasy, and it had its momentum somewhat hindered by pacing issues and a mountain of world building.
Yeah.
Now with the setup out of the way, season 2 feels like it's an opportunity to step up for the series.
Right.
I have not finished the season, and neither has Hadi. So maybe Isa, who has finished the season, can tell us, is the season 2 of Dragon Prince live up to its promise?
Is it worth it?
Yeah, does it come close to Avatar The Last Airbender, for example?
No, not at all. I think we are in a period of time where even some of the kids' movies that we've seen, I mean, the obvious ones would be like Carmen San Diego that we reviewed,
Also on Netflix, yeah.
and on Avatar and all of that. Like, we've got so many good kids movies, kid series out right now. Dragon Prince continues to be just that, right? The bar doesn't go any higher than that. And while season 1 was a kind of like a kids meditation on what the complexities of war, season 2 focuses a bit more on the idea of death, right? And how to kind of like introduce that idea to both princes, right? Because now they find out that the father is dead, so to speak, and how they kind of like deal with it in the midst of having this kind of action adventure. It shifts away from the original trio to include both the siblings, right, who are currently pursuing them, and they meet part ways, and then there's the whole conflict that rises kind of out of that. Season 2 suffers from the same problems that season 1 has. Pacing. There's a serious problem with that, and as cute as it has been so far, I still think the animation is great. It is still very, very slow, and it doesn't get to the point quick enough. It lingers in portions that I feel are unnecessary and unimportant, not just to the characters themselves, but to the overall story arc, right? And we never quite get there yet. You know, it's basically the really, really long journey to Mordor.
Oh wow!
Right, and instead of cutting away to everybody else, we are just following. Them there. So yeah, I mean, is it worth it? No, not really. I mean, like, it was an easy watch, right? It didn't really take me that much time or that much attention, for that matter, right? Just to understand what was going on. I don't know. Like we said in season 1 that maybe this has potential, but now that we're 2 seasons since, I'm not so sure anymore, right? There are plenty of other better things to watch. There are flashes of emotional quality that you would find in like your Avatar, especially similarities to the whole group dynamic that Aang has together with
Korra.
Not with Korra.
With
Toph and all of
Toph.
that, right? Like, there are flashes of those moments, but they are rare and few and far between.
Katara.
Yeah.
How would you rate this second season?
I would give it a 6.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's a decent kid series.
Okay.
But it really doesn't live up to our idea of what it could possibly be.
I watched the first episode. I was so bored. Oh my god.
Me too.
I couldn't make it.
I mean, I made it 2 episodes in.
Okay.
I think the hang up is that I'm expecting too much from this series.
Yeah.
I mean, considering his past work with Avatar
and Korra, right? So Last Airbender and The Legends of Korra were exceptional pieces of work.
Yeah, for sure.
The Last Airbender, especially with its emotional twist, the journey of Aang and his growth, how I mean, every single character had this really sympathetic growth arc, or like really, I cannot explain. It's one of the best series ever made, lah. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a near perfect animation.
Yes, it is.
So when you have the Dragon Prince and how draggy it is, and then you don't have the action that Avatar: The Last Airbender had, with the research going into the move set and all this, the martial arts, kung fu stuff that was going on, it feels very bland.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
It does. I don't know if it's the Dragon Prince feels like a lot more personal a story, right? And a lot less epic. There's no action to carry you through. There's a very little, like, the amount of conflict in a given season is like 2. Like, you have 2 points of conflict that gets dragged out over the entire season, as opposed to having it being episodic, and that in and of itself, right, creates a problem. I do have to say that the second half of the season did get a lot better, but if you struggle through the first 4 episodes, then I don't think it's worth putting up with. Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we'll be moving on to another Netflix thing. This time it's a movie. It's called Velvet Buzzsaw, which sees Jake Gyllenhaal reunite with Nightcrawler writer-director Dan Gilroy. This is a body horror satire about the preening pretensions of LA's fine art scene. The basic premise involves a series of killer paintings, literally killer paintings, made by an unknown artist. The pieces are discovered, appropriated, and then exploited by competing art galleries. From there, the haunted paintings annex gory punishment on those who have allowed their greed to get in the way of art. A lot of his art world satire is based on caricature, so it doesn't really delve deeper besides making fun of stereotypes. That superficial aspect means that Velvet Buzzsaw lacks the teeth and depth of their previous collaboration, Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler's exploration of the paparazzi, for example, is a million times smarter, a million times darker, and a million times more affecting than this. That being said, this supernatural evisceration of snobbish materialism, posing as culture, is gleefully entertaining in a B-movie kind of way. It is a 6 out of 10.
Oh. But Nightcrawler was an excellent movie.
It was a 10 out of 10.
Exactly.
Nightcrawler, it was an Oscar contender movie.
This is a drop.
This is a huge drop. But I mean, it's still entertaining.
Okay.
I give it a pass at 6
Alright.
out of 10. Next up, we have Big Mouth, which returns for a very special Valentine's Day episode called My Furry Valentine. While season 3 is still some ways off, Big Mouth returns very briefly.
Yep.
This animated series, it's about puberty-struck 7th graders and their literal hormone monsters. Has always been hilariously gross and overwhelmingly lewd. But My Furry Valentine takes its built-in carnal humor to whole new levels. I think this is outrageously lewd.
Yeah.
Because after all, what other holiday would make preteens more stressed about their sexual awakening than Valentine's Day? There is finally a proper arc for Matthew, the only gay boy in school.
Yes.
As he struggles to give a shit about the holiday in question. There is Jessie, who's coming to terms with her mother's sexuality. And meanwhile, Jay has the funniest story arc, having trouble juggling two relationships between two pillows, one male and female. So I guess he is bi-pillow. So I mean, he's trying to fuck both while enjoying neither, which in itself is a great metaphor for relationships. And those are just the side plots.
Yep.
The main story involves Andrew and Nick as usual. Nick has the heartwarming story as he spends the whole episode fighting and ultimately reconciling with his hormone monstrous Connie.
Yes.
A natural arc considering a boy will have trouble adapting to a new female hormone monster. But oh my god, the Andrew storyline will make your skin crawl. He's hellbent on winning back his crush Missy on Valentine's Day. And it goes from funny to like absolutely horrifying. At first, it's the casual fumbling romantic attempts, a bit rom-commy. But as he gets more desperate, Andrew actually gets kind of scary with the way he approaches Missy. Like he could one day be a school shooter kind of scary, Like it's quite troubling, like his behavior, and it's tackled very smartly, and it's probably the best thing Big Mouth has ever done.
Yeah.
I love this particular episode. You saw it as well, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, what do you think about it?
I mean, like, there's no more prime opportunity for a series like Big Mouth than Valentine's Day, right? And definitely one of the better Valentine's Day specials I've ever seen, period.
Yeah.
I think the ideas that they're exploring this time around are just an extension of what they did in this most recent season. It didn't feel like it was forced. It didn't feel like it was necessarily anything like outlandish or anything of the sort. I really enjoy Connie and Nick's arc this time around. I felt that it was very nuanced, and it was very funny, and it was very heartwarming. But at the same time, like all the little bits about toxic masculinity that they've been bringing that they brought up, and how really terrifying. I was genuinely terrified at the way that he was acting.
Yeah.
Shook me a little, right? Because it takes place. It's a lot of like very feel good, if somewhat awkward, moments of storytelling, right? Overall, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next season as well.
I thought it was an 8 out of 10. How would you rate it?
Easily 8 out of 10 for me too.
The last title I will be covering on Quick Hits is called, get this is a mouthful, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. That's right, that is one title, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. Despite its amazing title, which I'm going to say one more time, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, it's actually more serious and less pulpy than it lets on. Sam Elliott plays a gruff and weary American legend, a role that him and his mustache is just made for, who's led quite a life, as his title implies. Two of his biggest accomplishments are in the title, but more than a flashback to his past adventures, this movie is more of a somber meditation on aging, loneliness, and the realization that your best days are behind you. It's more like Logan than Indiana Jones. However, those two parts don't quite mesh or live up to its emotional themes, so it's neither as good as Logan nor as good as Indiana Jones, So it's neither dramatically artful seriousness, and it's not as fun adventure, So that being said, it's kind of a dour but solid character study. It's a 6 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
To wrap up this episode, we're gonna delve into the pull list.
Oh yeah.
We didn't have the pull list last month, but we have it this month. I'll be talking about two particular comic book titles. First is a new DC comic called Female Furies. This is basically hashtag Time's Up in Apocalypse. So it's about the apocalypse patriarchy and about the female Furies, kind of Me Too awakening, shall we say. It's funny, it's feminist, and it's all around fantastic. It's written by someone called Cecile Castellucci, who also wrote the awesome Shade the Changeling Girl miniseries, so please check that out as well. The book focuses on Granny Goodness and her elite all-female warrior squad of Furies, which range from more famous characters like Big Bada and Mad Harriet to smaller characters like Aurelie and Lashina, who I actually haven't heard of before this series. Writer Castellucci and artist Adriana Mello paint a compelling picture of the Furies' constant humiliation, struggle, and abuse, subservient to the whims and appetites of very powerful men like Darksiders. The idea of a hashtag Me Too awakening on a demonic planet where everyone is evil, including the Furies, is super fascinating. Like Tom King's Mr. Miracle miniseries last year, new writers have been able to mine fresh psychological and emotional depth from Jack Kirby's Fourth World. But the difference is, while Tom King's Mr. Miracle felt like an intimate character study that you kind of see on HBO, Female Furies is more in line with Kubrick's grand sensibilities. It feels very operatic in skill, style, and dialogue. Very highly rated from me. This is 9 out of 10, and it's only been I think 2 or 3 issues.
Right.
So I really love this, and I recommend that you pick it up.
Nice.
Next up is a graphic novel called Comics Will Break Your Heart. So this is a bit of a meta narrative. It's okay. You know how comic publishers are notorious for mistreating people responsible for creating the properties that have gone on to make billions for corporations, you know? The passing of Stan Lee back in November reignited conversations about his legacy and how he used his position as an editor to take credit for Marvel characters and concepts that were perhaps, you know, more or less created by his collaborators. Like I mentioned Jack Kirby, you know. But this question of credit and compensation goes far beyond one person than just Stan Lee. In this book, Faith Erin Hicks, who is the author of this book, explores the history of exploitation in a very interesting way, in a kind of YA adult novel kind of thing, about 2 teenage heirs of a fictional superhero comic called The Tomorrow Men, which is being adapted into a $200 million movie. It actually starts out as a love story between the teenage leads, Miriam and Walden. It establishes a romantic attraction between the 2 teens that is quite palpable and very cute. The thing is, Miriam's family should be rich. Her grandfather was the co-creator of that smash hit comic series, but he sold his rights to the series to his co-creator in the 1960s for practically nothing. Now Miriam is dirt broke. How can she afford college when her family can barely keep a roof over their heads? As if she didn't have enough to worry about, Miriam's life gets more complicated when she falls in love with the aforementioned Walden. And it turns out Walden is the grandson of the man who defrauded Miriam's grandfather, and is the heir to the fortune. This teen romance gives Hicks the opportunity to teach younger readers about the inequality that pervades the superhero industry, and hopefully the lessons of the past will teach valuable lessons to comic book creators of the future, to not let their works get taken away for peanuts, you know. It's happened too many times. You hear stories about people who have created major properties living in their cars, being bankrupt right now, unable to pay for surgeries and stuff like that. You know, there are GoFundMes for all these type of things So I think this is a good YA book to teach younger readers about, maybe like all the superheroes that you see on the big screen, they were created by someone who's poor right now, who didn't get any credit or any money besides that one little created by thing on the screen. I thought this was a very valuable read, very interesting. This is an 8 out of 10 for me.
Nice.
So that wraps it up this month. Next month, oh boy, our first big title of the year.
Oh no,
Captain Marvel is in.
What? So the reviews will be coming in,
and it looks pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, there are a bunch of reviews on Rotten Tomatoes from people who have not seen the movie.
Yeah, but those are just fuckboys lah.
Yeah. Who I mean, for lack of a better term, hate women lah.
Yeah.
So we will make our own judgments. We'll see it for ourselves, see how good it is. Of course, we mentioned Jordan Peele's new movie Us. Super excited for that, man.
Me too.
We'll be also wrapping up the first season of Genlock.
Yes,
Uh,
I'll be
Roost-
catching out on that too.
Rooster
Very
Teeth's
good.
new series starring Michael B. Jordan, Macy Williams,
Yeah.
bunch of big guys like David
Yeah,
Tennant,
yeah.
and all that. One of the most exciting things that I'm more than Genlock, more than us, more than Captain Marvel. I'm really, really excited to see Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix,
Yeah.
Oh,
which
okay.
looks incredible. It's by David Fincher
Yeah.
and Tim Miller, who directed the first Deadpool. It looks incredible, the
Yeah, it does.
animation. And I'll be covering smaller things like The Kid Who'll Be King, which is the Arthurian.
I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, Joe Cornish
Yeah.
movie. There's Miracle Workers, Level 16, and Mob Psycho 100, which will be wrapping up a great second season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am currently wrapping up, finishing the last maybe 100 pages of a gigantic novel called Black Leopard Red Wolf, which I will be covering
Who's
next
that by?
month. It is by Marlon James. It's a great fantasy novel. Its premise is what if Game of Thrones was in Africa, which is a very simplified premise. You know?
Okay, that's very simple. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it's deeper, and I'll delve into why it's deeper than that. lah.
Alright,
and
definitely.
also cute little graphic novel called Death Wins a Goldfish. It's about Death who's forced to go on vacation, and his travel journal, what he does.
Okay.
It's a nice little meditation on why we shouldn't, overwork.
There's another
ourselves. It is a graphic novel.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So that will be next month. But till then, this has been Hitzer.
I'm Hardy.
I'm Isa.
We'll catch you then. Bye bye.
Bye bye.